Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we are headed back underwater, but we're going to do it unlike any other time. Today we're going to turn around and watch bass explode on the surface. We're going to watch underwater perspective of topwater strikes on frogs, a Whopper Plopper, a popper, a spook, a rover, all sorts of different topwater baits so we can understand bass behavior as we go into the post-spawn. Just a couple of thoughts before we head subsurface. There are some things that I really want you to pay attention to. Now, we've broken this out into 4 categories. We're throwing a frog, Whopper Plopper, a walking bait, and a popper. We're going to separate them out differently because I really want you to pay attention to how the fish eat each different style of bait. You're going to notice that they're not all the same. There are some really distinct characteristics about how the bass are interacting with those different baits. And I think it will seriously impact how you throw your baits, how you modify them, when you throw them going into this year. Now, the next thing that I want you to really pay attention to is the sheer number of fish. This footage was shot in the post spawn. These fish are done spawning, they've pulled off, and we have talked year after year about how bass school up headed to summer. When bass school together, they can get crazy, and that's exactly what you're going to see in this footage. Pay attention to their interactions with each other, fish headbutting and fighting for lures, and then at the other end, once you've watched all the footage, I'm going to give you some of my thoughts, some modifications based on what we've seen, and some different things that you can do to apply to your topwater this summer. That is some of the craziest footage that we have ever shot. A couple of those clips we've used before. You might have recognized one or two, but a lot of that stuff is brand new. And it is amazing to watch how those fish interact with those different baits. You know, the Whopper Plopper, when they get behind that bait, and this is the size we were throwing, the 130 size in that video. When they get behind a Whopper Plopper, they are hard charging, full throttle, trying to catch up to that thing. And they just eat it any which way that they can. A walking bait. The walking bait, as it's walking, the bass are underneath it trying to position so that they can get a shot at the side profile and the head of that bait. It's really interesting to watch them trying to get their position. That should tell you some things. When you're throwing a walking bait, don't cover water too quickly, because those fish are going to run out of room coming towards the boat. Sometimes you get that bait right to the boat and there's a bass sitting there, he's twitching, he's looking at it, and he doesn't strike. You just plain ran out of room. So keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to slow down that cadence or hit the bait harder and faster, but still try not to cover too much water. Don't do those great big hits where it's gliding wide. Just do little sharp snaps right in place to try and change it up and trigger those fish. The popper, if you're walking a popper, they treat it just like the other bait. But if you're just popping it, almost all of them come straight up from underneath on that bait. Straight shot right at the belly of the bait. Totally different than the others. And then the frog. Most people think of a frog as a cover bait. We have been preaching for years that our favorite place to throw the frog is open water. And now you see why. They treat it a lot like that popper. I think it's the profile. Even though it's walking, because we always walk a frog in the open, even though it's walking, because it's short and stumpy, it's wide, it's not a long profile, it's more like that popper where they come straight up on that thing and hit it from below. They don't really come at it from the side or the back. So how does that impact your fishing? Well, one, if you weren't throwing an open water frog, obviously it's time. I mean, those fish are fighting over each other trying to get to that thing. Did you see the two where that thing gets eaten, spit out, and another bass comes underwater, still underwater, not even top water, and eats that thing right out of the water? Once those fish are schooling, they go crazy. They trigger each other. That is the feeding frenzy mentality that we're always preaching about. Whether it's deep cranking in the wintertime, throwing a jerk bait, throwing a fluke, or throwing a topwater, we're always talking about trying to get those fish fired up, get a feeding frenzy going, get that schooling mentality. It works with topwater, and it starts the second that spawn starts to end, and those fish go into that post spawn all the way into summer. They will stay schooled up. If you have a choice, focus on areas that have large numbers of fish, not just one or two. If you fish through a place and you're catching fish, but it's one here, one there, and then you fish through another place and you catch one and 5 or 6 follow it up, that's the place you want to be going back to. Because the place where schooling is happening is where the odds are the highest that you're going to hook a fish and it's going to fire them up, and the giant fish are going to get involved and come up and try and get that bait. And you can catch a really, really big fish on a small topwater. Now, the last thing I want to add here is the red hook. The red hook argument. Every time it comes up, people go crazy about it. Some people are all for it. Some people think it's such a farce. Now that you've seen how these fish strike these baits from below, I really want you to process that. Now a Whopper Plopper, where they're coming full throttle from behind that thing and just trying to catch up and they're just gonna smash it any way they can, probably not as important. But a walking bait or a popper, the walking bait where they're positioning, trying to choose their best moment to strike that bait, it happens fast. Did you notice how fast those fish are on those topwaters? All they're looking for is that perfect shot. They're looking for something on that bait fish that they can aim for. You put that red treble on the front of that bait, they aim straight for it. And it's happening fast. Some people think, oh, if I put a red hook on there, they're going to see my hook. I don't want them to see my hook, so that doesn't make sense. In this situation, where the fish are coming in hot and you're trying to get them revved up, you do want them to see it because they're going to aim right for it. Same with the popper. On your topwaters, if you're having trouble keeping fish hooked up, try a red hook on the front of the bait, never on the back. You don't want them to pull, you don't want to pull their attention to the back of the bait where they'll just barely skin hook or miss altogether. Pull them to the head. If they eat that thing head first, if they grab up here, those other hooks are flopping around and will likely hook them somewhere in the rest of the fight. Your odds go way up of landing that fish. Down in the video description, we'll link you not only the baits we were using in the video, we'll give you our top 3 from each category. Well, the Whopper Plopper is just sort of a Whopper Plopper, but we'll explain our favorite sizes and colors for that one. The others, the frog, the popper, the walking bait, we'll give you our top 3 baits and our favorite colors for each one of those, as well as the treble hooks that we use, upgraded hooks, red hooks, all that stuff will be linked down in the description. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you want to see more footage like this, let us know. This is really complicated footage to get, but we love doing it. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you soon.